This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. You got questions, she got answers. I'm going to be honest with you, it's not a topic that everybody wants to talk about, but there are always questions. There really are. We're going to dig into some of those questions from our listeners today, and that is courtesy of an excellent estate attorney that's practicing in the state of Maryland. And even though she's in Maryland, she has insight for all of us, and it's so great to have Julie Schejbal back on the program with us. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. How about yourself?
Real good, real good. I want to thank everybody that has reached out so far. Instant feedback, steve@gmail.com. Shall we dig right in? What do you think?
Sure, absolutely. That'll be fun.
Okay, so we got Rachel from Portland checking in, and she says, I appreciate your conversation. The timing couldn't be more perfect. My dad passed and left everything to his new wife. We feel blindsided. Do we have any options, or is it just final?
I mean, I think the first thing to do is to let people know that they all often, when a parent dies or somebody dies and the money goes somewhere unexpectedly, feeling blindsided is a pretty common thing. So there are a lot of people in that their feelings aren't unusual.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best thing to do is to consult with not only an estate attorney in the Portland area, but somebody who engages in estate litigation. So he or she can talk to them about, the not advantage, disadvantage, but the difficulties that they may have in trying to, overset the will, and then basically see whether they want to go forward or not. And I think, some attorneys, everybody has a different way to bill. They may say, okay, well, you need to come in for a half hour. We're going to charge you X dollars. And I wouldn't tell them to let them stop that. I would encourage them to go forward because, hey, they're not going to know if they have a case unless it's evaluated by an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And, you don't go forward, you don't pay the money, you're kicking yourself 10 years from now about, I should have pursued this. So I would encourage them to pursue it. I would also say to act quickly because I know in Maryland, we have a 6-month statute that goes from the date the estate is open 6 months into the future. So if you want to caveat or try to overturn the will, you can't sit on your hands. You got to kind of get moving.
Whoa. I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
And let's say you're in her situation, and your dad passed. He's with his new wife. You got blindsided, and well, actually, you were blindfolded. In a way.
You might be blindfolded too, so we can have both.
Right. Do you have a legal right to see what was in the will?
So you do. In Maryland, when we open probate or open estate administration, part of what we file with the court or the register of wills is what's called a list of interested persons. And so the interested persons are anyone who has an interest in the will. So in this case, current wife, and maybe, he left some money to his church, the church, whatever that looks like, and anyone who would have an interest if he died without a will. So the kids might be brought in by, being somebody who would have an interest because he did not have a will. So they would have an opportunity to review the will.
Like in her situation, dad passes, new wife scoops up everything. How do we know there was even something legally documented? That's where I'm going. Like she may have had access to all the accounts and everything and just scooped it up. But how do you know she was really legally entitled to it? That's where I'm going with that.
Well, okay. So then you have, that's part of like litigation where you're going to ask questions about, during what's called discovery, where people are getting information, bank accounts, titles on bank accounts, how with the signature card, which is essentially who had access to that bank account or stock account or whatever it looks like. So that's part of the discovery aspect of it. And it's also one of the things you're going to weigh in litigation is, all right, is the, time and effort worth it? Like, some people will come in and you'd be surprised. Some people will fight tooth and nail for the smallest amount of things,
Mm.
and other people will be like more agreeable, even if it's a larger amount of money. The story to tell about that is that I had one day I was coming into the office, and a friend of mine, colleague, was coming in using the conference room occasionally. She was kind of doing she was full-time mommy, part-time attorney at this point.
Hmm.
So come in, she comes in, she says, "You're never going to guess where I was today." I don't know. Where were you, Rose? And she goes, "Well, I was down at the Register of Wills office, and myself and this other attorney were in front of the Register of Wills, and our clients are arguing about the contents of the house, like dad's fishing poles." And
Mm.
mentally, I'm doing this calculation. I don't know what my colleague billed out at, but I'm going, don't know what a fishing pole costs, but I do know what I would pay for tennis rackets. I know what my billable rate is. And instead of arguing with that about my dad's used tennis racket, I could have gone to, you know, the great
Sporting goods, right?
sporting goods store and
Right.
bought even a better racket than I have for that. So I'm like, what are you doing? So, and I'm not saying in Rachel's case that that is the case, but you
Right.
sort of have to, figure out if you pick your battles, I guess.
Well, yeah, and then there's also sentimental value. How do you put a
Right.
value on that? But then there's also a lot of other things that ensue. Pride, and you want to prove something. So let's say you're
Right.
not very fond of dad's new wife, and you're
Exactly.
thinking, I don't care what it costs. She's not getting it. That fishing pole that's 28 years old, that's worth, I don't know, $34
Tennis. Right.
right now.
Yeah.
Um, let's go to, hang on one second. Here we go. Sophie is in Bronx, New York, and says, my parents have assets in multiple states. Does that complicate everything after they pass?
It does.
Mm,
And because if
mm,
it's in the parent's own name, you will have probate in New York, where it'll be primary state, but then you'll have what's called ancillary foreign probate in all the other jurisdictions. So if they own real estate in those states. So if you had a, beach house in um, Maine or something like that, you would have probate both in New York and in Maine. And while that tends to be maybe more streamlined, that's been my experience. It's still more time, effort, and additional expenses. So one of the things that her parents could look at is doing a revocable trust and then putting their assets in these different areas into the trust in different jurisdictions or states. Because once the asset is in the trust, it avoids probate not only in New York where they're living, but the other states that they have property in. So that is one time I recommend you do a trust to avoid probate is if you're looking at real property in different states.
mm. So, Claire is in San Francisco and checks in instant feedback, Steve at gmail.com. She says, my partner and I aren't married. What risks does that create if one of us dies unexpectedly?
So I think it creates a lot of it, and I don't know what California law says. So I'm going to just start very broadly with that. But so a couple things, like in Maryland, we have now what's called where Maryland doesn't believe in common law marriage. So you could live with somebody for a year or 50 years, and Maryland never considers you married. I know, not sure what California does, but one of the things that can bring up is like I have a probate case I'm working on now that I want to back up to is that in Maryland, but now in lieu of common law marriage, you can register as a domestic partner. And what that really entails is filing a document with the Register of Wills, paying the filing fee, which I think is like $50.
Mm-hmm.
And that then doesn't make you married, but it gives sort of some more legal legitimization to the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So here in Maryland, I've got one now that they were domestic partners. They never filed the paperwork.
Mm.
Why the one partner dies, and we're going through everything now. She had a will which left everything to her partner, which is a good thing because if she hadn't had a will, everything would have gone to her relatives, who are those cousins, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But in Maryland, we also have a 10% inheritance tax that everything that the partner is going to inherit, he's paying this 10% tax on.
Mm.
And if they'd registered as a domestic partnership, the tax would have been wiped away. So,
Oof. All right. Let's look at you. You mentioned domestic partners. So pop something in my head. Two people living together, 15 years, maybe 20, not married,
mhm.
don't have wills. One of them passes. Is the other person entitled to anything?
So if they had something joint, a house, bank accounts, or were beneficiaries on a retirement, like an IRA, life insurance, that person would get all of those assets. But if something was in the deceased partner's own name, we'll take Marilyn in my case, the house was in her name without a will, that house would not have gone to her partner. It would have gone to the relatives. And I think in this case, we're talking about going out to like cousins. I don't think, if I remember correctly, shouldn't have siblings. So it's skipping the partner.
Right, right. Ooh, that's dicey. And then how do
It
you
is.
prove that they were together for 15, 20 years?
I think it becomes I think sort of like the burden of proof, right? We get witnesses. Well, yeah, I live next door to Steve and Sammy, and they lived there forever.
Mm,
I've seen them together. And if you've been together for 15 years, I'm sure there's a slew of people who can say, yeah, they were. We had picnics at their house or whatever. We saw them
right.
together. I saw them, and then you could look at, okay, so the other part would be like legal documentation, address on your driver's license, address on your passport, where you file your, address on your tax returns, that kind of thing. So I think that does carry a lot of
Mm. Ah,
credibility.
yes. Okay. Interesting. Is the domestic partner law similar in many states? Because I'm just seeing something. I heard something way back that New York is different than other states. That's as far as I go. I don't have any more.
Right. Well, and I don't know either. I think Maryland is. I know Maryland doesn't, believe in common law marriage. And but I've grown up in Maryland, and I remember, like, I think fourth grade, we were studying Maryland history, and we
Mm,
learned that Maryland was founded years ago by the Catholics who got kicked out of England. So, being a good Catholic state
gotcha.
300 years ago, we don't believe in common law marriage.
Got it. Oof. But again, this all runs deep. There's so
Right.
many different pieces. When we first met, we talked about this very briefly, but it just pops in my head. Out of all the type of law that you could practice, why did you focus on estate?
Well, part of it was dumb luck, to be honest, because when I got out of school, the first job I got was working for the IRS in the estate and gift tax section. So
Hmm.
during
Okay.
that, I got to read a lot of really good estate plans and review them, and I got to review a lot of bad ones
Wow.
and got a really good background in the tax aspect of it. So that then when I moved to private practice, it made like a natural segue, both from the tax part and then having, been exposed to lots of planning.
How interesting, Julie. That's really wild. It's almost as if you sampled the appetizer and said, "Yeah, the restaurant's really good. I'm going to dig in." And then
Yeah,
get my license. I remember
right.
past the bar. Wow. Let's go to one from Karen, who is checking in from Detroit. She says, "My mother is starting to lose memory, and my siblings and I disagree on when to step in. How do you know when it's time legally?"
Well, I think legally you don't. You would like. I think you wouldn't want to wait till it's legally time to step in because that standard's pretty high. You might have to go to court for that, and I think you want to avoid that.
How do you even?
So,
How is that standard even set? Quite honestly.
well, it's like in Maryland, it's a part of it is a danger to themselves and a danger to others, or a doctor certifying that they lack the capacity to make their medical or financial decisions. So it's a pretty high standard.
Hmm.
But I think there are things you can do now. Maybe you're not taking over, but make sure that mom has a power of attorney that allows one of the kids to help her with her financial decisions. And even if mom's not ready to give everything up, this isn't a zero or sum game or all or nothing. Mom can get the power of attorney in place. Mom can continue to handle her affairs, but when she needs the help, so you've got a document in place that allows you to step in for mom. And also you might be able to, and these are tough conversations. I know that to also, have it as now we're going to let mom do her, continue to do things, but we're also there. We can provide some oversight so that if mom forgets a bill or whatever that looks like, they can step in. And the other thing, I think sometimes it's also helpful for mom because I don't know, I can't stand the phone tree. If I have to get on the phone tree, I try to make my assistant do it for me.
Mm,
So, mom could say, hey, you go ahead and handle this mess with the phone tree. And, so she can offload things maybe she doesn't like to do sometimes.
right. Wow. This really, well, if you were a divorce attorney, it gets mucky there alone. There's a lot of emotion involved, et
Oh, God,
cetera.
that's the worst. Absolutely.
Yeah, fighting and all of that. But I got to say, probably at times not too far off in this area of law, too, because there's very specific details. Emotions can run high. Maybe not as much on the divorce side of things, but yeah, I mean,
I think there's like, I think more divorces, I think it's the true exception that proves the rule in divorce where it's sort of an amicable parting of the ways without a lot of fighting. But in this area, the problem is when there is fighting, it is bitter. And I had a divorce attorney once tell me the state fighting is worse than divorces because in a divorce, it's the baggage from the marriage and maybe the dating part of it. In an estate, it is baggage from the time that you were a little kid and somebody stole your biscuit at Thanksgiving or whatever. It's just
yeah,
built up, 50, 60 years of anger or tension or whatever that is. So,
wow. Yeah. I mean, you could have done real estate.
yeah, I could have. But I think that gets, fuzzy too. And that gets more fuzzy, but, it can get fussy all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
And by the way, everybody, instant feedback, Steve at gmail.com. Great questions. You want to check in? We've got her, and she can answer them for you. Alina from San Mateo says, how do you divide assets fairly when one child was the primary caregiver for years?
well, that's always a tough one.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I sort of start with, it should be equal, but if the parent says, well, I recognize that this child was helping me out or, doing more of it, then you could say, all right, he or she gets 10% more or 15% more, or whatever that, looks like. And sometimes, we talk a lot about all the tension that families create. Sometimes it can be kind of rewarding where one of the mom or dad dies and the some of the siblings say, yeah, I recognize that uh, Lena took care of mom. And even though I'm supposed to get my equal share, I'm going to move some or all of it to her because I recognize that if without her, mom wouldn't have had a great life or there wouldn't be anything to split, whatever that looks like.
Hmm. That's I find that one very difficult in
It
thinking
is.
about it because you have to really be in sync with your siblings and they
Right.
have to acknowledge that. And as I'm thinking about it, I know a situation now, and I don't know if there would be any conflict, but somebody lives, let's say, in New York, right,
Mhm.
and cares for both parents more than the others because one is 3 states away, the other one is like 5 states away.
Right.
So if they're doing any estate planning, you have to get everybody on board. Now, what about if they're not equal, everybody equal, but meanwhile, you did spend years taking care of the
So
parents?
one of the things you could do, and this thought did just pop in my head, is that you can't do this retroactively, but if it becomes this family decision or consensus that yes, that Susie's going to take care of mom, and you could enter into what I would call like a caregiver agreement where it's not you're not getting paid at the end, getting a larger chunk of the estate at the end, but you're actually getting paid
Hmm.
monthly to take care of mom, whether that's, because you're buying her
Yes.
groceries and, taking her back and forth to the doctor or, something like that. Or sometimes it's common where, um, both you're taking care of mom and she's living with you. And so then you might enter into sort of that plus like a lease where mom pays you some rent every month for, use of the house and that type of thing. So that is like a flip on it where you're getting compensated while mom's alive. And honestly, I I see how people have to take care of, the caregiving aspect of it. And I think whatever they're getting is probably way worth, they're probably not, they're getting underpaid, you know.
Thinking about that, ooh, very dicey. But you could walk away and say, "All right, everybody, I'm not doing it anymore," and we can hire somebody. We can hire somebody. Now we know the answer. It's better to have a loved one take care of them if they're willing to. And there's many services out there that will allow a family member to take care and then get compensated through an agency which is connected to insurance, and it's all vetted and all of that. Very dicey again,
Yeah.
And I got to believe.
I mean, it gets difficult.
Yes, and if Alina's asking that question, there's probably a little something going on there. Just saying.
Right.
What do you?
And the other thing is with the caregiving, is just sort of an aside, is that it is better to be cared for in your home.
Yeah.
By one of your kids or whatever. But two things can happen. One, the kids have to be able to do this, and I don't mean that they can or won't, but if they have full-time jobs, they can't quit their job necessarily to take care of mom. And
Yeah.
two, sometimes it's this level of skill that people require that we don't have because we're not medical professionals.
Totally. But if that one person is willing to do it and can, and it's not at the point where you need certain skills for the caregiving,
Right.
We're before that. I think it's a beautiful thing,
Absolutely.
but there should be fairness. I'm all about fairness.
Yeah.
Final question. Got a couple, like a minute left.
Okay.
What is the most challenging type of cases for you? And when I say challenging, I don't mean just legally and logistical, but even emotionally.
So I think I think the hardest ones are sort of where people have a lot of money, which is a good thing, but they can't decide what they want to do with it. I guess it doesn't really matter how much money you have. It's sort of deciding what you want to do and pulling the trigger, because there's sometimes, well, what would you do? Well, I can't tell you. It's your money. And hey, I hate for people to tell me what I'm going to do with my money. I am certainly not telling you what you should do with your money. And I think getting people to kind of focus on the whole process can make it challenging.
I can feel that right there. Like I can see it, I can feel it, where they're asking you, and you're in the middle, but you have to remain impartial. And you've made suggestions before. Let's say you have 3 kids. 2 of them have great careers, they're doing well and everything. And then there's one that's struggling, challenging, not the most responsible with money. Yeah. You've offered some suggestions there, but again, they're just suggestions. It's really on, the person that's got the assets to make the decision.
Exactly. I can give you some options.
Sure.
It's sort of focusing on those options kind of thing.
How do if somebody's in Maryland, wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
So they can always call the office at 410-286-8100, or they can go through my website, which is www.jasestatelaw.com.
Fantastic having you on here today.
This was fun.
So much insight we got. Again, instant feedback, steve@gmail.com if you want to reach out. And next week, we're going to look at Medicaid.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
By the way, got a question about it? We're here too. All right, we'll talk then, Julie. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.